handcuffs to an ambulance motive, but District Attorney Michael Doherty says,
I promise the victims and the people of the state of Colorado that we will secure justice and do everything we must do to get justice in this case.
None of the names of the victims have been released. The police chief says they are working with the coroner's office to make the identifications and then tell the family members. The White House promises an update is coming soon on what's happening at the U.S. southern border.
An update in the coming days and perhaps an opportunity to finally explain to the world why the administration, at least so far, seems unable to slow the massive influx of illegal migration. New pictures detailing conditions there are beginning to emerge, despite the White House's refusal to allow press access to the many facilities housing thousands, including one such facility, which is said to have about 400 people in a space meant for 260, about which the White House claims to be, quote, closely following the CDC guidelines.
Fox's Kevin Corke. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick telling Fox News at Night what's happening at the border is not spontaneous.
They won't call this a crisis. It's a design disaster.
Fox News is...
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
There are charges that the staff of New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is meddling in a state investigation of sexual harassment charges against him.
Governor Cuomo's assertion that he's not going anywhere, despite now 8 women coming forward accusing him of sexual harassment and misconduct, is not going over well. An attorney representing accuser Charlotte Bennett, a former Cuomo aide, says the governor is deliberately interfering with the ongoing independent investigation launched by the New York Attorney General's office. Attorney Deborah Katz said attorneys hired by Cuomo's office are debriefing staffers after their interviews with investigators. In a letter, Katz urged AG Letitia James to direct the governor to cease this highly improper practice, especially because 2 of Cuomo's accusers are his current staff members.
Fox's Brian Yanis. The National Weather Service says it's turbocharged its forecast technology to better predict extreme weather events. The upgrade was put into effect Monday. It's been tested for 2 years. They say it's improving forecasts of heavy rain or snowfall by 15% 5 days out, and better pinpoints hurricane and tropical storm formation as much as a week earlier. Forecasters also say this new model does not predict more rain or snow than actually falls, something that previous forecasting modeling had a tendency to do. The NBA is mourning the passing of one of its all-time greats.
Basketball Hall of Famer Elgin Baylor has passed away of natural causes at the age of 86. The 1958-59 NBA Rookie of the Year was an 11-time All-Star and a 10-time All-NBA selection during his 14 seasons with the LA Lakers. Baylor was the LA Clippers general manager from 1986 to 2009 and was the NBA Executive of the Year in 2005-2006 when the Clippers won 47 games and advanced to the Western Conference semifinals. Peter Schwartz, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sanicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live.
Intelligent black person. Yeah. More tools for action. More tools for and action from law enforcement helps. Law enforcement agencies need better training and deeper connections with the community about how to identify and respond to hate-based crime against AAPI people, including how to treat victims with dignity and respect. They also need to report all hate-based crimes to state and federal authorities. But by itself, it's not enough. Social media platforms rooting out incitement and making hateful content hard to find helps. The attack on January 6th revealed what many already knew, that it was far too easy for white supremacists, armed militia members, and conspiracy theorists to plan violence in plain sight on social media. This is not a new problem. The complicity of the companies can no longer be ignored, and they must enforce their own terms of service, let alone change their policies. Could they censor any more? Neighbors, congregation members, and people from all walks of life must sit down, listen to each other, and build a truly inclusive society together from the ground up. And we know what the word inclusive means when it comes from the likes of Keith Ellison. Along with that comes better education. We need explicitly anti-racist, anti-bias, and anti-hate education programs so bigotry can be beaten back before it takes root amongst the next generation. And what they're talking about, of course, is critical race theory. That's what they're talking about. So that's Keith Eliason and Jonathan Greenblatt. Have your grain of salt handy if you want to read this yourself.
Again, they reference January 6th and then put in a narrative that nothing like that has ever been described in any of the police reports or any of the investigation.
Right.
There was no armed militia.
No.
No white supremacists.
It
Just a lot of
wasn't.
stupid people.
Yeah, really. And it wasn't an insurrection, but so what? Okay, then we will move on to the Post. And the Post got out on the baseball field today, but they left their fastball behind. With new Wuhan virus strain hitting Guam, certain safeguards must remain. Let's revisit others. There are key developments in the Wuhan virus pandemic that give Guam a chance to keep its guard up without having to revert to broad stroke shutdowns. The arrival of the Wuhan virus California variant on Guam was confirmed in a press conference Monday by the governor. The Wuhan virus California variant has been on Guam for weeks, at least. Of the 26 samples that the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention sent back to Guam, 7 patients were confirmed to have been infected with the California variant. 4 of the 7 had no recent history of travel, so these show, according to officials, that this variant has been in our midst for quite some time. The Guam samples were sent to CDC weeks ago. One point of concern with the California variant is that it's shown to spread 20% more rapidly, and it has been shown in California to cause more severe Wuhan virus cases and hospitalizations. The greater severity of the California cases was found, however, before any Wuhan virus vaccination was made widely available in the state. On Guam, increased vaccinations, which will soon be expanded to Guamanians age 16 or older from 40 and older currently, are giving officials hope residents will have a better chance of beating the faster spreading Wuhan virus strain from California. Even with the new strain reaching Guam, the governor ruled out delaying the reopening of the island to international tourists, which is set for May 1. The governor also doesn't feel it's necessary to change the mandatory quarantine for incoming travelers in the government Guam facility, at least for now. Well, it's a good sign that Guam officials are no longer applying precautionary measures in broad strokes, unlike the island-wide shutdowns from last year. some protocols do need to be revisited. The good news, if it can be called that, is that while Guam has the California variant, it doesn't have the Wuhan virus strains from the United Kingdom, South Africa, or Brazil, which have been reported to cause more severe illnesses than the California variant. Not far from Guam, there are cases of new Wuhan virus first reported in the Philippines on March 9. The new Philippines variant has reached England, according to British press, has raised concern because certain vaccines may not be as effective against this strain. The article goes on to say, revisit testing at the airport for certain flights. The most we can do is try and stop it at our port of entry at our only international airport. Cases of fake Wuhan virus test kits have been reported in the Philippines, so it's up to Guam to conduct its own testing upon arrivals of travelers. While the government of Guam has ruled out Wuhan virus testing at the airport, it might be worth revisiting the testing protocol from places or countries that have worrisome cases of Wuhan virus variants and where the integrity of testing may be in doubt. It doesn't hurt to add another layer of screening. Guam used to have hundreds of Wuhan virus cases a day at the peak of the pandemic last year. On Guam, one hospitalized Wuhan virus patient at GMH. Guam had 0 new cases reported in the last 3 days prior to Monday. These are encouraging signs. But we have to carve out additional safeguards. GovGuam is encouraging more local government personnel to get the Wuhan vaccine by giving them 3 hours of paid time. The same generosity can be expended to the private sector by subsidizing the private sector's employees 3 days of paid leave to get vaccinated as well. If we are all for fairness, this is what GovGuam should do, using part of the $600 million funding from the federal government for pandemic relief. There are other precautions we can continue to take that will not cost much but will require discipline. There's mask wearing, the 6-foot distance, etc. But there's still one thing that's still unknown. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention can't tell for sure how long current vaccines will keep us immunized. Without this information, there will be some Guamanians who are not rushing to get vaccinated. The sooner we get answers to how long vaccines can keep us protected, the more informed Guamanians will be to make the right decisions. Yeah, okay, well, it's an editorial, I guess, better than what the Daily News did. So let's go to the card. I've got my program notes here, starting out with Steve Ignacio, our chief of police. You'll recall he still doesn't know what's cooking at Jerry Kitchen, and there's nothing new on the Jerry Kitchen front. And yesterday he said, my gosh, we need to do drug testing. So I provided a cost-free drug testing tutorial online yesterday. And so far today, Steve has been very consistent. Today he said nothing and did nothing. So that's about all I can tell you about Steve for today. It's kind of a regular part of the program. And then we've got Therese Terlahi, who blames the military for Carlotta's stonewalling. And former Archbishop Apparon is back in the news. Apparon is on the card under the heading Apparon versus 10 kids. That's pretty appropriate. And from yesterday, I'm going to finish up on Robert Underwood versus San Nicolas. And then I'm going to get into Bavacqua versus MT Green. But in order to properly be trained to do that, I've got to go through the column that ran on Saturday over the name of Samuel Batanzas, who told us, who schooled us non-Chamorros how we should act during Chamorro Week. So it's always good to have one of our betters come out here and educate those of us in the proletariat as to how we should think about things. And thank goodness Betanzas did that, so that we'll probably be properly be able to deal with Michael Bavacqua's column. Okay, so I can put Steve aside for the moment, resting assured that he probably won't take any dramatic action today. Going on to Therese versus the military. And this is a story, a follow-up story that ran in the Daily News, a follow-up from yesterday's story. The title, Base Burials. Even our own government isn't transparent with the people of Guam, which is correct. Some Guam residents are increasingly skeptical that neither the military nor the government of Guam will provide details on the multiple burials that have been discovered at Camp Bloss. This next quote comes from Jonalyn Farnham, who is a student at the university majoring in Chamorro studies and social work. Now, there's a dynamite combination. I expect that, she'll hardly walk out the door with her diploma in her hand, that employers won't be scrambling to offer her high-priced offers with a background like that, Chamorro studies and social work. Here's what Jonalyn said. It bothers me that even our government is transparent with the people of Guam. Regardless of the numerous burial sites already found, these new findings are just as significant. As Chamorros, we have a right to know about the status of our skeletal remains of our ancestors. I guess Chamorros have rights that are superior to others when it comes to transparency of the press. Here's what she said. As Chamorros, we have the right to know about the status of our skeletal remains of our ancestors. I checked out the Constitution. It's in there. It's in the Bill of Rights somewhere. I just couldn't put my finger on it today. Former Senator Kelly Marsh, formerly known as Senator Kelly Marsh Titano, tweeted that the military is also at fault. Now, this is really humorous. Just make a note of this. The military is at fault. Why are we giving the military a hard pass on providing us details instead of placing all responsibility for public comments and details on their destruction on an overworked, understaffed, underfunded local office? Yeah, great comment. Didn't you run for re-election, Kelly Marsh Titano? I thought you did. How did you come out? Yeah. The Pacific Daily News earlier this month reported there's evidence of multiple ancient burial sites found at the new Marine Corps base being built in Dededo. Preliminary reports state that there are now 12 burials across 4 grave sites, 8 more than reported last year. Neither the Marine Corps base Camp Bloss nor the Guam State Historic Preservation Office have disclosed details. Pacific Daily News sent Freedom of Information Act requests to both. The request with the military is pending. The Preservation Office. Now, there's nobody in the government named Preservation Office. So if you're going to tell on somebody, use their name. Carlotta Leon Guerrero, not the Preservation Office, rejected the request, referencing a statute that protects information, etc. The office, as of 4 p.m. Monday, hasn't stated how releasing information about burials would be an invasion of privacy or how property would be damaged if the information were released. The burials are on a military base, not accessible to the general public. Now, here's one guy who got it right, a usually outspoken guy. The SHPO is not representing the people of Guam, which they're supposed to do, said historian Dave Lotz. Now, you'd think with a name like that, he'd be in real estate, right?
No, but they did tell him to take a hike.
Very good, Jose. That's what historian Dave Lott said. I'm very suspicious that she's basically putting up a smokescreen. Senator Talisa Nelson, who chairs the 36th Guam legislature on island preservation, stated that she never received information on burials from the preservation office. Now, there's a credibility problem here. She may very well have received it, but she's not admitting that she has it. It wouldn't be the first time she referenced a document that she didn't have, right? Yeah. Like Therese Terlahi stated earlier this month, Nelson said she's not aware that more burials were found at Camp Blanc prior to the Daily News report. The State Historic Preservation Office of Governor have known since November. This boils down to how the Department of Defense views the rights of the Chamorro people. This is Therese Terlahi, how the Department of Defense views the rights of the Chamorro people and whether or not the SHPO is truly hearing the concerns of our people and advocating in our best interests, especially for the simple allowance of having our people honor these ancestral remains and sacred burial sites. We believe these to be inherent rights. These are inherent rights for all our people. Now, I couldn't find that in the Constitution. Showing respect and giving dignity to the remains that are part of our heritage and ancestry. Well, I go back to yesterday's story in the Daily News. And this is what I found. The local government has known about many burials since at least November, but didn't inform the public. I'll repeat that. The local government has known about the many burials since at least November, but didn't inform the public. Adelup stated that the governor didn't share the news of the major discovery because Governor Leon Guerrero wanted a better understanding of what the government of Guam is doing with the skeletal remains of 3,000 of our ancestors being stored in boxes scattered in office. And besides that, a couple of the cars were in for oil changes. What does the boxes have to do with the question? The governor's office, as you were, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, who is the acting SHPO, shared similar sentiments last month, stating that the burials at Camp Blanc are among many found on Guam and that it is not a unique situation. But she still doesn't want to talk about it, right? So, going back here, request refused. The Daily News submitted Freedom of Information Act request to the Guam State Historic Preservation Office. That's the SHPO. And also, that's Carlotta Leon Guerrero. So
Same person?
The same person. The SHPO is Carlotta Leon Guerrero. But they don't write that way. The Daily News submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the Guam State Historic Preservation. They always make it so easy to hide. Acting Preservation Officer Carlotta Leon Guerrero rejected the request, pointing to a statute under the National Historic Preservation Act that, quote, protects information about the location, character, or ownership of historic properties from public disclosure when disclosure could result in a significant invasion of privacy, damage to historic property, or impede the use of a traditional site by practitioners. Okay, that's 54 U.S.C. 307103. Now, I cheated here because what you're supposed to do, Anamita, what you're supposed to do is if somebody cites a statute, you never look up the statute. You just proceed on the basis. If I told you that 4 GCA Section 103 repealed the law of gravity, you'd say, well, there's no sense checking that out. I don't have to worry about dropping things anymore because they won't fall down. So here's what 54-307-103 says. A, the head of a federal agency or other public official receiving grant assistance pursuing to this division, after consultation with the secretary, shall withhold from disclosure to the public information about the location, character, or ownership of a historic property if the secretary and the agency determine that the disclosure might, 1, cause significant invasion of privacy, 2, risk harm to historic property, 3, impede use of traditional religious site by practitioners. This is not for Carlotta Leon Guerrero. She's not the secretary of the department. So she cites a federal statute that gives her no authority whatsoever, and then repeats the basis of the statute, the 3 points of the basis, which apparently have nothing to do with the remains that were discovered. So there's a name for what the SHPO did, for what Carlotta did. It's called stonewalling. And Dave Lotz hit the nail right on the head. She's putting up a smoke screen. Now let's go back to what Talina Nelson said during the time she was rummaging through her office to find out what papers she had and which ones she didn't have. This boils down to the Department of Defense views the rights of Chamorro people and whether or not the SHPO is truly hearing the concerns of the people, especially for a simple allowance of having our people honor these ancestral remains, etc. We believe these to be inherent rights for all people, etc. So she blames the Department of Defense, as does former Senator Kelly Marsh Titano, when at the very beginning, the article from yesterday said the military deferred to the local government to provide details. So the military, Joint Forces Marianas, said, SHPO, you go ahead and tell the folks, provide the details. So then Carlotta comes back and cites a federal statute that has, in which she has no role whatsoever, and says, I can't tell you that because of this statute, which has probably, even if it did apply, would be irrelevant to the situation we're in. So who are you going to blame? Did the military have anything to do with this whatsoever? Yeah. Well, let's blame the military then. You know, it's awfully transparent here, folks, when you guys come forward as eco-fascists and cultural preservationists. And it's very clear that what you're really doing is hunting for pretexts to pretextual bases to bash the military. This is a classic example. You can fool some of the people some of the time. I mean, some of the people all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time, but you can't fool me at all. I'm not as dumb as I look out there. This is a classic example. All right, moving on to the next item on the card. Now let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You've heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every dollar spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores, plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are, Apparon versus 10 kids. And this is a story from the Post. Former Archbishop's motion to halt clergy sex abuse cases denied. Let me try it again. Former Archbishop's motion to halt clergy sex abuse cases
denied.
There we go. U.S. District Court Chief Judge Francis Tydenko Gaywood on Monday denied former Archbishop Anthony S. Apparon's motion to temporarily halt proceedings in Guam's clergy sex abuse cases. Apparon in 2020 used another person's challenge to a 2016 law that lifted the civil statute of limitations on child sexual abuse to ask the court to stay all proceedings in the clergy abuse cases against him. The Vatican stripped Apparon of his authority and title for allegedly sexually molesting minors. Apparon also faces civil cases of sexual abuse allegations of at least 10 minors. The judge, in her two-page order, noted that the plaintiff in the other case, filed on September 25, 2020, a notice of voluntary dismissal before disposition of the motion to dismiss. Without the parallel pending territorial court proceeding, the court finds defendant's motion is rendered moot and hereby denies the motion, the judge said. So here's what we're talking about. There was a Superior Court case that was filed last year that challenged the constitutionality or the efficacy of our 2016 statute that set aside the statute of limitations for child sexual abuse cases, and that's what allowed all of the suits to be filed, including some of the suits against Apparon. That case, then Apparon made a motion saying, well, depending on how that case goes, it might have an impact on my case. In other words, if the trial court granted, found for the plaintiff in the case in the Superior Court, that could mean that there's at least reason to consider the constitutionality of the our law eliminating the statute of limitations, especially if there were an appeal to our Supreme Court which found in that direction. But in the other case, former police officer A.J. Balahadja, through his lawyer, challenged the 2016 law that allows victims of child sexual abuse to sue their abusers in institutions with which they are associated any time after the abuse. Apparon said in his 2020 filings that the outcome of that separate challenge would impact similar claims of child sex abuse against him. The former Archbishop requested the federal court in 2020 to abstain from any further proceedings in this action pending the Superior Court of Guam's resolution on the motion to dismiss in the other case. Apparon is among dozens of Guam clergy accused of child sexual abuse. There are now nearly 300 claims totaling more than $1 billion. The Archdiocese of Agana filed bankruptcy to try to settle the claims and keep its Catholic parishes and schools open. So we could call this the return of Tony Apparon, who's been in defilade for quite some time.
Short-lived.
Yeah, yeah. So we aren't sure where he is. We know that per the Vatican's order, he cannot dress as clergy. He cannot hold himself out as a bishop. He cannot use the title of bishop. He hasn't been defrocked, but he really has no, how would I say this?
His faculties were removed, right?
His faculties were removed, yeah. So he's still a priest, but his weapon has been disabled. All of his weapons have been disabled. His stripes were torn off. The brass buttons were taken off of his uniform. I don't know if this was done at midnight or at 2 a.m., with the drums beating in the background. But that's where
he was rendered a eunuch.
A religious eunuch.
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very good way to describe it. So he's still around, and his case is still pending before the district court. Okay. Turn on your Law and Order notebooks here. And the next item on the card is called the Ninth versus the First. This is the Ninth Circuit pauses territorial rights case pending U.S. Supreme Court ruling. A federal court case that it could impact the rights of people with disabilities who live on Guam has been paused pending the outcome of a similar case from Puerto Rico that will be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. Both cases involve U.S. citizens with disabilities who lost their supplemental security income payments after they relocated from the mainland to a U.S. territory. Congress specifically excluded residents in most territories, including Guam and Puerto Rico, from the program, which provides monthly support of as much as $800 to eligible people with disabilities. Guam resident Katrina Schaller sued the Social Security Administration in December of 2018, challenging the inability of Guam residents to receive support payments under the SSI program. The failure to provide benefits to people on Guam with disabilities violates the Organic Act and also the Equal Protection Clauses of the Constitution, Schaller's lawsuit states. Schaller last June won her case in the U.S. District Court of Guam, but the federal court appealed to the Ninth Circuit. The federal government has argued that the SSI program is federally funded and Congress has the authority to decide how federal money is spent. U.S. Supreme Court justices on March 1 granted a petition for writ of certiorari. You tailgaters all know exactly what that means because we've talked about that in many cases. That's how cases get to the Supreme Court nowadays, via a petition for writ of certiorari. I lost my Facebook here. Here we go. Momentarily. The Supreme Court on March 1 granted a petition for writ of certiorari in United States versus Vallejo Madero, which involves Jose Luis Vallejo Madero, a person with a disability who lost his federal SSI payments when he relocated from New York to Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, Mr. Vallejo Madero was receiving the money in New York, moved to Puerto Rico, and kept getting the money, and the United States sued him to get it for him to pay it back. A federal appeals court last April ruled that Vallejo Madero can't be denied SSI payments, here it comes now, simply because he now lives in Puerto Rico and not elsewhere in the United States. The federal government was scheduled to file a brief in the Schaller case last week, but asked the Ninth Circuit panel to instead cancel all deadlines because of the pending Vallejo Madero Supreme Court case. The Ninth Circuit granted a request to suspend activity in the Schaller case. Quote, a decision in Vallejo Madero will likely substantially affect this court's consideration of the arguments in this appeal, the federal government noted. Stated, noting Schaller does not object to pausing the case. The government has asked the Supreme Court to consider the same rational basis rejected by the district court in this case. So this could be a really important case because the United States Supreme Court is going to have to take a look at the powers of the national government pursuant to Article 4, Section 3, which reads, Article 4, Section 3, Paragraph 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or any particular state. So that section of the Constitution has been the basis for much of the law that was enacted for all of the territories. Now, when it comes to the states, the 50 states, Congress is somewhat constrained by Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which tells the Congress what its powers are. In the territories, there's no limitation on the powers of Congress. So the question then becomes, does the United States Constitution apply in a territory ex proprio vigere, a fancy Latin term which means by its own force? The Constitution applies in the 50 states ex proprio vigere, by its own force, but it does not apply in the territories ex proprio vigere, and we found that out in the so-called insular cases, the most important of which was a case called Downs versus Bidwell, which I have studied and written about quite extensively. And although there's a myth floating around about Downs versus Bidwell that says that because there are alien races living in the conquered lands, the Constitution doesn't have to apply. This is just BS. The Constitution, the reason the Constitution doesn't apply is a commercial reason. And the major holding of Downs versus Bidwell is, let me see here if I can find, should have bookmarked this somewhere in here. It's the so-called uniformity clause. Yeah, go ahead. Let's take a break while I find the uniformity clause.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your mezcla favorites, like oxtail kadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mezcla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community, yet national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere, on your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Yeah, the section I'm looking for is right in front of my nose here. It's Article 1, Section 8, very first paragraph. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So if you're importing sugar into Massachusetts, and the duty is $20 a ton for sugar, and you import sugar into Oregon, better be $20 a ton, because it must be uniform throughout the United States. So the uniformity clause does not apply, and that's the major part of Downs versus Bidwell. All the rest of it falls in after that.
Commerce.
Business. Yeah. So, so the question then became, what would be the status of goods imported into the United States from these newly conquered territories? The first case that came before the Supreme Court was called DeLima versus Bidwell. The collector of customs in New York was a gentleman named, guess what? Bidwell. You'd have thought he'd have been an auctioneer with a name like that, right? Yeah.
Or one of the ones in the audience.
Uh-huh. It's just kind of like Jeff Pleadwell. Jeff Pleadwell should have been a lawyer. They'd have never got him on his pleadings, right? Yeah. So Mr. DeLima sued Bidwell because Bidwell wanted to charge a duty on, it was either bananas or oranges that DeLima was attempting to ship into New York from Puerto Rico. DeLima sued and said, you can't charge a duty on this stuff coming from Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico ain't a foreign country. And the Supreme Court said, that's right. It's not a foreign country, right? And then in Downs versus Bidwell, the question broadly stated was, does the Constitution apply to these newly conquered territories? If the Constitution applied ex proprio vigere, then the uniformity clause would have had to applied. Oh, yeah. And in Downs versus Bidwell, the Supreme Court said, no, the Constitution doesn't apply. We've got Article 4, Section 3. That's how the laws are made for the territories. And the Constitution does, quote, not follow the flag. Yeah. And there are probably, it depends on how you define them, but there are probably 15 cases that you could call the insular cases. Balzac versus Puerto Rico is a very important case because it's a criminal law case, but it held that making the citizens of Puerto Rico United States citizens did pass constitutional muster. When before, when the United States citizenship was granted to conquered territories, it was always because those territories were on their road to statehood. Not so with Puerto Rico. There's a case called 24 Diamond Rings versus the Philippines. Once again, customs cases. Yeah. It's all very interesting reading, and so often advanced for propositions for which the insular cases have nothing whatsoever to do. Not so long ago, the Daily News ran a scathing order back when they used to write editorials, saying the insular cases are racist, and it's because of the insular cases we can't vote for president. Just absolutely dead wrong. So I had to correct the Daily News on that one. And there are so many people who say, well, if we could just get rid of the insular cases, then all kinds of wonderful things would happen. And I say, no. If we got rid of the insular cases, then the uniformity clause would apply. There goes duty-free shoppers. There goes then we're signed up for all the tariff laws of the United States. There goes our mirror image of United States income tax. And we're going to be paying taxes to the national government. And we're going to be, for all practical purposes, incorporated. So your common sense tells you if you have the choice between unincorporated territory or incorporated territory, incorporated's got to be better because it sounds so much better, right? Well, the incorporated territory of Hawaii elected its first governor never. Hawaii never elected a governor until it became a state. The governors of Hawaii were always appointed by the president. From the very beginning of its status as a U.S. territory, people in the territory of Hawaii paid United States income tax, which went to Washington. It didn't stay in Hawaii. People in Hawaii were liable for selective service, getting drafted just like everybody else. So, in a sense, they had many of the disadvantages of statehood, but they weren't voting for anybody except their local governments, just like we are. So the organic, as you were, the insular cases and our unincorporated territory status is a benefit that we should not discard lightly. The genius of the insular cases is that it allows each of the territories to be set up a little differently from the other. Guam and Virgin Islands are very similar, but we're totally different from the Northern Marianas. Puerto Rico has their own deal, and American Samoa is completely different. So don't be so quick to condemn the insular cases and run away, because I'm sure local savants will be saying, this will be a perfect opportunity. This Schaller case, this case from Puerto Rico, be a perfect opportunity for the Supreme Court to overrule the insular cases. The last thing we want to see happening. Now, I'm going to make a prediction just based on very little information here. And I'm going to predict that the First Circuit will be reversed, and the rule will be that not paying SSI to people in Puerto Rico is not a denial of equal protection. And right after the half-time break, I'll come back and tell you why.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Terror at the supermarkets. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
He shot twice in our direction, and I thought he was going to shoot my son. Oh.
In Boulder, Colorado, a gunman started shooting people in the parking lot of a supermarket and then went inside. By the time he was taken into custody, 10 people, including Boulder police officer Eric Talley, were dead.
Officer Talley responded to the scene, was the first on the scene, and he was fatally shot.
Boulder's Police Chief Maris Harold, who says they are working as quickly as they can to identify the other victims. A suspect has been taken into custody. He appeared to be bleeding as police led him to an ambulance. Boulder's District Attorney Michael Doherty.
With an eye towards the prosecution of that case, we're going to be very careful about the crime scene and how we go about this investigation. We owe it to the families of all the victims, each and every one of them, to ensure that justice is done.
The slain officer, 51-year-old Eric Talley, had been on the force 10 years. He leaves behind 7 children. State malice murder charges have been filed against Robert Long, the man accused of killing 8 people at 3 different spas in the Atlanta area last week. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling for a halt to all violence against Asians and people of Asian descent, saying through a spokesman that he's profoundly concerned about the targeting of Asians during the COVID-19 pandemic. Israel has begun voting in the country's 4th parliamentary election in 2 years. It's seen as a referendum on the rule of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israelis vote for parties, not individual candidates. Today's election triggered by the disintegration of an emergency government formed last May between Netanyahu and his chief political rival Benny Gantz to manage the coronavirus pandemic. America is listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Another coronavirus vaccine candidate is getting good marks in clinical trials.
Phase 3 trial results are in from AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine, and Dr. Anthony Fauci says the U.S. trial involved 30,000 participants.
78.9% vaccine efficacy at preventing symptomatic disease. Importantly, with regard to severe or critical disease requiring hospitalization, there was 0 in the vaccine arm.
While there were concerns in Europe about this vaccine and blood clots, Fauci said the trial showed no evidence of deep vein thrombosis with trial participants. AstraZeneca has not yet sought emergency use authorization from the FDA. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Arkansas may drop its mask mandate next week. Governor Asa Hutchinson says he may decide to let the order expire at the end of the month without issuing a new one. City of Miami Beach, Florida has extended by 3 weeks a state of emergency, declared to try and control spring break rowdiness, which Mayor Francis Suarez calls
a surge of people that is well beyond the capacity for any small city like Miami Beach to be able to manage.
The state of emergency includes an 8 p.m. curfew. So far, police in Miami Beach have arrested more than 1,000 spring breakers, twice as many as last year. In Virginia, an attempt to wrangle an escaped cow nearly took a tragic turn.
Holy cow, that did not go well. A Harrisonburg police officer recovering from a gunshot after being struck while trying to capture a loose cow over the weekend. Police were assisting local ranchers after the bovine began hoofing it all over the small city about 50 miles northwest of Charlottesville. The injured officer is reportedly in good spirits. The cow, not so much. The animal was put down after sustaining injuries while on the loose. It's still unclear who or how the officer was shot. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Mezcla Bistro welcomes you this Lenten season with some of your favorite seafood specials, house-made especially for you. Try our Fisherman's Platter, fish tacos, grilled local catch salad, spicy garlic butter shrimp, candied salmon, and even our creamy lobster padka prau pasta. Don't forget to ask about our Lau Lau Style Island Seafood Purse. You will not want to miss this limited-time seafood special, open from Monday through Saturday for lunch and dinner in Agana. Call 479-2652 for reservations. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
after that big halftime show that we've all come to know and love so much, back here in the second half of Tall Tales, and I was talking about the case that's going before the Supreme Court from the First Circuit case that originated in Puerto Rico that is very similar to a case that is now lying before the Ninth Circuit that originated in Guam. So my prognosis is that the Supreme Court will rule against the will reverse the First Circuit and find that there's no equal protection violation in not paying SSI in Puerto Rico. And of course, if that's the case, then the same ruling would hold for Guam. And here's my analysis. When you're dealing with equal protection violations, this is how it works. Equal protection involves the creation of two classes, two different classes of people, and a treatment of the classes differently. You treat Class A differently than Class B. Now, in our Guam case, Rodney Jacob, plaintiff's counsel, has found the ideal plaintiff because his client is named Schaller, who has an identical twin. Both of the twins have the same malady that makes them eligible for SSI if they live in the 50 states. So both of the Schaller twins lived in Pennsylvania. Both were drawing SSI. One of the twins moved to Guam, and when she got to Guam, she could no longer draw SSI. Classic case of very easy to see the two classes and how differently the two classes were treated. So then the question becomes, is it unconstitutional to treat the members of the two classes differently? And in order to get to that answer, you have to remember what I told you about the degrees of scrutiny a court brings to the classification scheme. You start out with strict scrutiny, which is limited to fundamental rights and things like sex, race, and one other thing I can't remember.
Gender? Oh, no, that's sex. Never mind.
No, not anymore. It used to be.
That's right.
Or fundamental rights. And then there's intermediate scrutiny, which is for similar things. And then the lowest level of scrutiny is called rational state purpose. So if you don't get into the strict scrutiny bag because you're not dealing with fundamental rights or sex or race, then the rational basis scrutiny is what applies. And here's how rational basis scrutiny applies. If the court could find that there is a rational state purpose in the treatment of the two classes differently, no constitutional violation. How does the court go about doing that? And here's how it works. If a person, primarily counsel, could hypothetically think of a reason to justify the classification, and it's not completely ridiculous, then the classification is not invidious. So all it has to be done is to hypothesize a possible reason for the classification, even if that's not the reason that the legislature used when it made that classification, even if that's not the reason that's being carried out. If it's possible, it's good enough. So the rational basis for the treatment of people in the territories differently from the people in the states is because people in the territory, at least in this one, don't pay into the federal treasury. And people in the 50 states do pay into the federal treasury. Now you can say, well, yeah, that's not fair, and we've got so many people from Guam enlisted in the military. None of it really makes any difference. All you have to do is determine that that's a good enough reason, that could be a reason, and there's no discrimination. And I think that's the general rule for equal protection violations. Now, there's a clinker in this one, and that is that 40 miles to the north, people living in Gilita who are otherwise eligible are drawing SSI. So is it an invidious discrimination to make a classification between people who live on opposite sides of the Rota Strait? And the answer is yes. Well, what is the reason for the rational state purpose this time? And the reason is this. In order to entice the Mariana Islands to come within the ambit of the American system, a covenant was entered into, and in that covenant, the United States said, we'll let you guys have SSI. Is it fair? Does it make sense? Good enough. A rational basis. So if the court is going to go beyond the rational basis, then it's going to have to find some kind of a hook to hang its legal theory on. And I suppose one hook might be, no, I don't know. I don't see what the hook would be to find the rational basis. The fact that it's not fair, the people really need the money, people in Guam has been, the usual identity politics. People in Guam have never been given the right of self-defense. None of that stuff makes any difference. So that's my prediction, that the U.S. Supreme Court will rule against the First Circuit, will reverse the First Circuit, and there will be no constitutional right to receive SSI in the territories. Okay, next item on the card.
Just a real quick question, Bob.
Sir.
So if what allowances were given to the CNMI was given through Congress, I take it?
Uh-huh.
So would that be the avenue to change it, or is that already set in stone?
Absolutely. Congress could change it tomorrow. In fact, Michael San Nicolas, as I understand it, has a bill before Congress to do that. Kind of what my grandpa used to refer to as the belt and suspenders approach. If you want to make sure your trousers don't fall down, you wear both a belt and suspenders. So if the case doesn't bear fruit, perhaps Michael can push it through the Congress. And there's some pretty good arguments, political arguments in favor of it, but political and legal are quite often not the same. Okay, talking about Michael San Nicolas, next item on the card here is Underwood versus San Nicolas. I started on this yesterday, but you may not remember, so I'll start again. I'm going to just be a little patient here. I may have somebody in the green room who, I do have somebody on the green room who wants to talk about SSI, and I'll pick him up and entertain. No, another Joe, the fact that we got stuck with paying without getting enough compact impact doesn't mean that they're going to make SSI applicable here. Was that your question?
Am I on?
Oh, was it close?
No, I was asking so CNMI got SSI because it was icing on the cake to convince them to become a Commonwealth. Is that what you said?
Well, I don't know if it was icing on the cake, but it was one of the bargain for considerations. You know how negotiation goes. You go in and you see a car you like, and you say, how much is this one over here? Oh, that one there, that's a steal at $1,500. And you kick the tires a couple of times, and you say, this piece of junk, you give me $20 and I'll have it towed away. And you go back and forth on the price, and you finally get down pretty close on the price, and you say, well, okay, I could see going $1,300, but you're going to fill up the tank with gas and pay for the license and registration, right? Well, I don't know. I got to check with my boss on that one. Well, you better hope your boss says yet, because the deal's going to turn on that. So the salesman goes in and talks to the boss about the baseball game, not about your deal, comes back out and he says, oh, yeah, boss will go for it. Okay, let's sign the papers. That's how negotiation works, another Joe.
So there's two things that come to my mind is either these people in CNMI read The Art of the Deal by Trump and Trump was somehow their legal advisor, or there's more to this story, and there's like some sort of like a buddy system going on. People in someone in CNMI knows someone in the Congress, and there's some kind of special deal going on. And if it's really usually about commerce, then I'm guessing it has to do something with mining something in one of the 14 islands in the NMI.
Well, here's a little known secret that I'm going to share with you, another Joe.
Okay.
It wasn't that the folks in the CNMI read The Art of the Deal. It's the other way around. Trump knew a guy named Eddie Pangilinan who was up front in all of these negotiations. And Eddie Pangilinan gave Trump all of the material for the book called The Art of the New Deal.
Is it? I was waiting for the horn.
Yeah.
Something's going on, Bob.
Yeah.
And maybe sometime soon it become clear because that together with now the FBI is somehow they're running circles around the FBI as to what the heck happened to how many billions of dollars that went through the casino and now the casino is closed down.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know, man. Uncle Bob, something smells like a fish. It smells fishy.
Yeah, well, I think the Northern Marianas did us a huge favor because there's been a small but vocal minority down here that is as hung up on casino gambling as you are on compact impact. I don't know why we're complaining about, not having, if we had casino gambling, we could pave the streets in gold. And you could look what a mess it made in the Northern Marianas. How many people got compromised, and it was just a gigantic mess, and it's not going to go anywhere. But going back to your theory about the CNMI and SSI, yeah, they knew somebody in Congress. Everybody knows, but that isn't how you get this stuff done. The way you get it done is you develop a negotiating strategy, and then you develop tactics to carry that strategy forward, and you work them. And that's exactly what the folks in the CNMI did. And it's what we can never get through our heads down here. We could take the covenant between the Northern Marianas and the U.S. and sit down with it and say, develop our own strategy and saying, we would like to have these same things that the Northern Marianas has, and we've got just as good a call on them as the Northern Marianas have. When we did that? Never. We've never done that. So,
hey, Uncle Bob, can I ask you a question?
So it's the kind of deal where you never get something that you don't ask for. Yeah, you can ask a question, another Joe. I hope it's a hard one.
So, is it constitutional for us to tax the heck out of CNMI? Because those people keep coming here to get stuff. We both know that they don't got much of anything on those teeny tiny little islands. Barely got any water, any fresh water. And these people keep coming here on shopping trips. Is it constitutional? Can we tax the heck out of them?
Tax them for how? How would we tax?
Like every time they come here to go shopping, can we tax them or what?
Just like everybody else.
I mean, like, and when they get on an airplane, and when they get the air, they got cargo on their ship. Okay, does Guam have a way to benefit from them? Okay, so like everyone else, how do we make money?
Well, we make money by luring them down here to buy things in our stores. So we don't want to discourage them. We want to encourage them to come down here and spend money and carry plane loads of stuff back to the Northern Marianas.
Well, let's see if we can work something like that. Okay, Bob, I'll just keep listening. I don't. We'll see what happens with these court cases and if anything out of the ordinary, extraordinary pops up. Okay, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
Okay, another Joe. So why don't we talk for 5 minutes and didn't get the compact impact once?
Almost.
That might be the new record.
You know how you get a good deal? You look at the former deal that was made and expand on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
They looked at Guam and said, we don't want to fall in that trap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you know, if you don't ask, you're not going to get much. And that's just that. That's pretty easy. Okay, so next on the card here is Underwood versus San Nicolas. I got to work on my Facebook here for just a second.
Little Facebook music.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to block somebody there who doesn't quite understand what Facebook is for, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to start over with Underwood versus the Cookie Monster. Underwood, the Cookie Monster versus QAnon, because you probably forgot what we talked about yesterday. The island is abuzz with the political theater created by Delegate Michael San Nicolas in taking cookies to Georgia Republican Empty Green. He's our representative, and we should support him as he represents us. But his tendency to engage in highly symbolic acts with little purpose other than to arouse emotions is bothersome. Of course, all politicians do this, but for some politicians, this is all that they do. In a CNN interview, Breonna Taylor called it a stunt in which he used troops as props. He responded cleverly by changing the subject. He replied that cookies were not props and that Guam can't vote for president. He asked, why didn't we want to talk about that, having no voting representation in Congress or even the 500th anniversary of Magellan's visit? He has not issued any statements on any of these issues, nor has he spoken in Congress about them. He could have. And yesterday when I got to this point, I said, yeah, Robert, like you introduced the statehood bill in Congress, or like you introduced the independence bill in Congress, or like you introduced what bill? I can only remember one bill that Robert introduced. That was the one that created the commission to investigate war claims. Remember what I was saying the other day about creating a task force? Yeah, that's what he did. I don't remember anything else that Robert did. Now, it's not saying that he didn't do other things. Perhaps it's more of a comment on my memory than Robert's accomplishments. But I do remember, and I'll never forget, that Michael San Nicolas got the Congress to reimburse the money that we pay out for earned income tax credit payouts. That is gigantic. And if he had to do it by engaging in stunts and symbolic acts, then let's have more stunts and symbolic acts. And I've been saying for years that this is what our representative in Washington ought to be doing. He ought to be going on last week tonight, and what's his name? Colbert, what does he call himself? Colbert.
Yeah. Colbert, yeah.
Yeah,
There we go.
yeah. These kind of guys, he ought to be on TV every night, and he ought to be telling the Guam story. And the way that you get people to pay attention, it's the old thing. You don't get people to pay attention by saying, hey, you know, something happened last week. It was really, really something. Let me tell you, down the street, a dog bit a man. Yeah, okay. What? Tell me the interesting part of the story. Well, you know. Okay, compare that with, you know, something really interesting happened down the street from my house yesterday. This guy who's a little bit off his nut got really angry at this neighbor's dog, so he ran outside and bit the dog. When a dog bites a man, it's not news. When a man bites a dog, it is news. Sometimes you have to do that kind of stuff when you come from a small island that's 8,000 miles away from the nation's capital, that has been part of the country for a little over 100 years, to get people to pay attention to you and notice you. Sitting around and moaning about not being able to watch the Disney Channel isn't going to work. So if it takes highly symbolic acts and stunts, let's have more of it. He, meaning Michael, has not issued any statements on these issues, nor has he spoken in Congress about them. He could have. Major General Esther Agagi, Adjutant General of the National Guard, came out with a supportive statement that praised San Nicolas for supporting Inafamalik and thanking Congressman Empty Green for ultimately raising awareness about Guam, which is true, which is true, and a good way to handle it. If some, this is a hackneyed old saying, but if somebody gives you a dozen lemons, make lemonade. And that's what both of them did. Through her public information officer, Agagi said there was nothing immoral, illegal, or unethical about the event. And I go along with it. In fact, I have so ruled. Absolutely. In a message to me, the National Guard PIO said the event wasn't political. So Robert's sending messages to the PIO. He's got to find out about this. And the PIO said there was nothing political. The PIO acknowledged they knew about a congressional tour, but did not know that it would be videotaped and distributed. He also said that the Army National Guard hasn't been contacted on this matter by the National Guard Bureau or the Department of Defense. Given this level of attention, now here we come to the all-knowing Robert Underwood. The all-knowing Robert Underwood. I don't know if he has a crystal ball. Last time I checked, mine was still in my closet. And I don't know if he got on the phone about 8 days ago and dialed Jim's number, and he said, Moylan, beware the Ides of March. So I don't know if he's a soothsayer, but he said, given this level of attention, I'm pretty sure that Pentagon legal minds are hard at work. I'll bet you there are half dozen lawyers in the Pentagon that are just sitting down there. They're going on Westlaw. They're just racking their brains. Boy, how can we sock it to these morons out on Guam and their representative in Congress? Now, Robert lets the cat out of the bag. He said they, meaning the Pentagon legal minds, don't care that Inafamalik was being advanced. They don't care about that at all. Uniformed personnel were being filmed for making a political point. Now, there we go. It was insurrection, right? Trump incited the insurrection. So just by saying something and repeating it, it becomes true. Let's stop and analyze it. Was it political? Okay, first of all, people use political. I hear the word every day, and being a former English teacher, I have to correct people a lot. It's just part of my DNA. As an example, who got promoted at DOE? Well, Cruz got promoted instead of Santos. It was all political. Really? What party is Cruz? Oh, I don't know. Well, how could it have been political? Well, it was political. In other words, people use the word political to mean not merit factors. It was not it was not an action based on meritocracy. It was based on personal reasons or family or friendship or something like that. That's what people mean when they say political. But to me, if political is going to mean anything, it's got to mean partisan politics. And for that discussion purposes, we have two political parties. We have Democrats, we have Republicans. So if you're going to talk about something being political, there has to be some reference to Democrats or Republicans in there somewhere, or something else that leads you down that particular path. So San Nicolas goes to the congressman's office. You don't have to be political to go to your congressman's office. I've been to I've been to Robert's office. I've been to Ben Bloss's office. I've been to Juan Pat's office. I think I even went to Madeline's office. If you go to Washington, that's what you do when you go to Washington. You go to visit your congressman's office, right? And then besides that, back in the day, before we had the internet, the only way, if you'd been off island for a long time, the only way you could catch up would be to go to Juan Pat's office, because they always kept about a month's worth of daily newses in the office for people to read. So you could go in there and hang around for an afternoon and read the daily news. Anyhow, going to a congressman's office is not political. I'm a Republican. I went to Juan Pat's office. Was that a political statement on my part? No. I wanted to read the daily news, right? So going to a congressman's office is not a political statement. If a National Guardsman in uniform goes to a congressman's office, that is not a political statement. Now, these guardsmen that are in Washington, I saw a couple of people say, well, they should have worn civilian clothes. I got a feeling they don't have civilian clothes. You know, they don't get to take steamer trunks with them when they deploy. They're deployed on rather short notice, and I suspect that they don't have civilian clothes. They probably don't even have Army dress uniforms. They've probably got a few sets of Army BDUs, a couple changes of skivvies and socks, and that's it. So when they're there in Washington under, you know, which apparently were rather hardship conditions from everything that we see, is there anything wrong with them going to the Capitol and walking around and taking a tour? For many of those guardsmen, it's the chance of a lifetime. They'll never be back to Washington again in a situation where they could go to the nation's capital, walk around, and visit anybody. Is that political? No, that's not political. If our car, you know, another autobiographical experience, okay, when I was in 8th grade, believe it or not, I was actually in 8th grade, and only for 1 year. That's the shocker.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I belong to this group called School Safety Patrol. I don't think there are school safety patrols anymore. We had a Sam Brown belt and a badge, and we stood at street corners and we told the kids, don't go, we couldn't direct traffic. We just tell the kids, don't go, don't go. So every year in Washington, there'd be a national convention of state traffic patrols. 25,000 kids from all over the country would go to Washington. And, you know, a couple dozen of us from my hometown went. We rode the train to Washington. We stayed in the Hamilton Hotel on K Street. It was just a wonderful experience. We marched down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Did you pass out cookies?
We did not pass out cookies, but we did have breakfast in one of the dining rooms in the House office building with our junior senator, whose name was Joe McCarthy. Oh! That Joe McCarthy, yeah. So the next time you want to, you can shake the hand that shook the hand of Joe McCarthy. So he was right there, big as life, twice as ugly, giving away free copies of his book. I don't remember the name of the book, and unfortunately, I don't know whatever happened to it.
Manifesto was not in the name.
Something like that. So was that political? No, it wasn't political. So let me go to the 7th inning stretch here, and we'll come back to Washington for a few more minutes.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafade, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sannicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Okay, so I think we've decided that Joe McCarthy and his attempts to influence an 8th grader may not have been political, although I think he probably did. So we've got National Guardsmen who get a chance to go and tour the Capitol with their own congressman. They pay a visit to someone who obviously needs a little bit of education on Guam. Michael makes a nice gesture instead of the way Empty Green, instead of the usual grievance politics approach to Washington. Michael comes along, here's a box of Guam chocolate chip cookies. I hope you enjoy them. And he had his guardsman there to say, here's what we have in Guam. We've got a National Guard unit, and they're here in Washington right now protecting your capital, Empty Green. I have a hard time seeing where it was political. I didn't see anybody saying, vote Democrat, or hooray, boo for Biden, or anything like that. Any attempt to do anything other than act like friendly, responsible citizens and representatives of Guam. So I think Michael should be given some sort of an award. That's my 2 cents worth. But this is what Robert says. Given this level of attention, I'm pretty sure that Pentagon legal minds are hard at work. They don't care that anaphomalic was being advanced. Uniformed personnel were being filmed for making a political point. The political point was what? Vote for Mike San Nicolas?
Cookies are good.
Cookies are good. Yeah, I'm starting a new independent party called the Cookie Party.
Follow the crumbs.
It's a grievous mistake which no one has defended in D.C., Democrat or Republican, probably because no one got very upset about it, Robert, except you. Unwittingly, San Nicolas has allowed M.T. Green and the Republican Party to launch a series of partisan attacks. Never before has a delegate spent so much time touting bipartisan connections and received so many partisan attacks. Green countered the attempted cookie drop with charges of using troops for political purposes in a strongly worded letter to the Pentagon. I guess she understood this as an ambush designed to make a political point. Well, if you look at the understandings of M.T. Green, she's liable to understand almost anything.
Would not rely on her understandings.
No. After all, why would politicians try to score? I guess she understood this as an ambush designed to make a political point. After all, why would politicians try to score political points? Something Robert never did, of course. Locally, Winnie will sing the delegates' praise. Can we have a little music here? Hooray for Michael! Hooray for Michael! Michael did a wonderful job. Well, you were right on that one, Robert. All other issues surrounding him are put out of focus for now. As pointed out by Kaler, the video was accompanied by music. Oh, my God. The video was accompanied by music and was produced to create an emotional response. I don't know. He should have known that nothing would affect the most disgraced member of the U.S. House of Representatives. She has been stripped of her committee memberships. Green has distributed QAnon conspiracy theories in the past, like California fires were caused by Jewish-controlled lasers. She also said that the best way to get rid of Speaker Nancy Pelosi was a bullet in the head. No Democrat in D.C. has stepped forward to defend San Nicolas. In the meantime, Delegate Stacey Plaskett has inserted a provision in H.R. 1, the Voting Rights Act, which is a horrible piece of legislation, about territorial voting rights. She's actually working on voting rights for the I'll take the cookie approach. I mentioned this yesterday. Stacey Plaskett is using one of the oldest tricks in the book. When you can't do anything, you appoint a task force. And it's a wonderful dodge because you can go back and tell your constituents, I'm working on this. You get a lot of good media opportunities, photo ops, earn media, and accomplish absolutely nothing. And when you've accomplished absolutely nothing, you tell your constituents, well, it didn't work, but by God, I tried. Hooray for Stacey Plaskett. Moreover, she's doing interviews on it and speaks on the floor of the House. Wow. Delegate Gregorio Kilili Camacho Sablan from the Northern Marianas regularly disseminates information on his activities on behalf of his constituents. He actually works legislation. When the Cookie Monster met QAnon, the monster was rebuffed. Next time San Nicolas wants to make a political point, he shouldn't bring troops, and he should bring more cookies. Try Gudzeria, the extra hard ones. And next time I run for office against Michael, vote for me. I hope you see the error in your ways now that I've explained this to you. Wow. Okay, I probably got Robert in the green room, huh? Another Joe is back for another bite at the apple, so to speak. All right. Go for it, another Joe.
Uncle Bob, you stole my line there. I was saying that his sin was he did not deliver the cookies when the Cookie Monster was home. So bad timing.
Yeah,
he should have timed it. But I wonder if it's a good idea for the Republican Party of Guam to try to resolve this, because, as you said, it's not getting the sort of attention that we want. We want attention for other issues regarding Guam. We don't really want the attention on how bad the representative of Guam is and how that's not accomplishing anything to help us. So I wonder if the Republican Party of Guam could meet with the Republican Party of Georgia, the chairman, and resolve this and say, hey, let's try to work together and not, there's no identified political, there was no political motivation here. And, personally, Kabab, I prefer to see pressure on Congressman San Nicolas to continue to register the surviving eligible surviving elders who can get water reparations, because I think there's at least 20% who did not.
No, another Joe. No.
There aren't any leftovers.
No.
They didn't register.
No. If they didn't register, apparently they didn't want it.
Well, I mean, by that stage of their life, they might need assistance, right? They might be have health issues.
Isn't this what we call the soft bigotry of low expectations? That old people aren't smart enough to file papers when there's free money involved?
Oh, that's not my intent, Uncle Bob. I'm just trying to be helpful. But I think maybe it could be resolved. I don't know if it's just an opportunity to let a Democrat kind of it was word something in the wind.
Well, you know that the Democrat, that Michael has worked very closely with the Republicans, and the Republicans have used their ability to open doors for him, and he's been working closely with them. Unlike Democrats who are specializing in sour grapes in order to see if they can't make things harder for San Nicolas to do his job. You know, and if San Nicolas can do his job and do things like landing that EITC cash out reimbursement, if he's a Democrat, I'll say Viva Democrats. I want to see the job get done. And I think that the whole Cookie Monster thing was a pretty good tactic. I liked it. So I don't see that there's anything there to resolve another, Joe.
Well, in the minds of these Republicans in Congress, they're going to make it an issue, and as you said, it'll be a good thing if he accomplishes the tax, the credit thing.
So if people want to make an issue out of somebody bringing some cookies to a congressman's office, let them go.
Well, the thing is, this guy McCarthy, I think you mentioned him earlier. He added on to it. He said that he referenced it as well. So I think it was.
You see, everybody but Michael, including Robert, figures that the only way to handle any issue that comes up is with grievance politics. If a Democrat did something, then we've got to be critical of it if it involved a Republican, because that's how we do grievance politics.
So the appropriate response would be just everyone, regardless whether you're Democrat or Republican, just come out and support Congressman San Nicolas for his efforts.
On this particular one, I'd say yes.
Okay, so that's the message. All you tall nation out there, come out in support of Congressman San Nicolas and help encourage him to accomplish the things that Senator Klitzkie was referencing, and let's get stuff accomplished for Guam. We're all going to benefit from it. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, another Joe. And I got somebody else. Who else but our Carl waiting in the green room? Probably cleaning his weapon while he's waiting for us, right? Our Carl, I got a head for Louisville, but I'm going to entertain you as soon as I get to Churchill Downs.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your mezcla favorites, like oxtail kadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mezcla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby, where we start the home stretch every day. I've got our Carl. Today, he's the most dangerous jockey in the race. Don't get too close to his whip hand, or you'll regret it. Jose, I like to eat cookies, sometimes for breakfast. But, cookies go really well with some things, not so well with other things. Coffee and cookies, good. Cold glass of milk, cookies, really good, right?
And Carl.
Cookies.
Just a little alliteration.
Cookies and a glass of cold milk goes really well. Cookies and sour grapes, Not so much.
Not at all.
Not so much. Okay, let's find out what's going on with the most dangerous man in the room.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon.
Sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in support of Congressman Nicholas. I think what he did is just about perfect example of why I, as someone who is quite critical of the Democratic Party, especially what it's become these days, highly radical, support Congressman Nicholas. I voted for him twice, and I'll probably keep voting for him as long as he shows an unconventional streak, is a little bit unpredictable. It's not just the same old, same old. I like people like that. You know, if I could vote, there's one other Democrat I might vote for because she is also unconventional. That's Tulsi Gabbard. I don't agree with everything on her on policy, of course, but she is very often politically incorrect. She's critical of this political correctness rampant movement. But anyway, I like what Congressman Nicholas did. And I'll paraphrase a quote from Thomas Sowell. People will never understand bureaucracies until they understand the fact that for bureaucrats, process is everything and results mean nothing. And Washington is unfortunately like that. You know, I have a feeling if Robert Underwood had won, that he would have taken a very grievance politics approach, and I think that's the wrong approach to take. I think Congressman Nicholas took exactly the right approach. He got probably a few $100,000, maybe a few $1 million worth of pretty good publicity for Guam. So I like what he did, and I support it. I support him. As long as he keeps doing that, being unconventional and not totally predictable, I will probably keep on supporting him.
Okay, R. Carl, he's got your vote of confidence. I'm sure that means a lot to Michael. So thanks a lot for calling in and casting your vote.
Sure. I thank you for allowing me to add in my comment of support to him. Sometimes he could use a little extra support. His people from his own party, unfortunately, seem to be attacking him sometimes, and I think it's needless. But anyway, I'll talk to you another time.
Okay, R. Carl, thanks for calling. So, boy, I don't know if Robert's listening to find out that he has created some disagreement with the most dangerous man. Whoa. Yeah. All right. So next on the card here is Bavacqua versus Empty Green. We just can't seem to escape Empty Green. But before we get into that, we've got some instruction from Samuel Betances, who I said a little earlier. It's good that we have one of our betters educating us proletarians as to how we should think about Chamorro Week. And this is what Samuel said last Saturday. I reside on Guam, but I'm not from Guam. It's not possible for me to trace my ancestry to Guam's first people. Neither of my parents were Chamorro. As a non-Chamorro, I have many rights, except for claiming to have equal cultural status as Guam's indigenous people. Boy, here's a guy selling. He does not have equal rights, equal cultural status as Guam's indigenous people. Guam is the heritage homeland of, are you taking notes here, Jose?
Yeah, you got to slow down a little bit there.
Is the heritage homeland of Chamorros. Not mine, he says. Nor yours if you're non-Chamorro. Even if members of your family have lived here for several generations. It's not your heritage homeland. If you are a descendant of a national heritage homeland like Philippines, Korea, Japan, or Palau, for example, you cannot claim even if born here, that you are Chamorro. Yeah, this guy's got a mind like a steel trap, doesn't he? Yeah, you remember Joe Friday on Dragnet?
Just the facts.
The facts, ma'am, just the facts. Just because I can move to the Philippines and live there does not make me Filipino. Wow. I wonder if he's got a degree in international law. I would be reminded often of that reality through the revealing question, quote, "Where are you from?" As well I should be. I may become a resident of the Philippines, but I cannot claim I am from there. So I guess when I'm traveling around in the States and people say, "Hey, tall guy, where are you from?" I got to say, Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Oh, really? I like Wisconsin. Oh, they have awful cold winters up there? Yeah. Well, what do you do during the cold? I haven't been there for a cold winter for 57 years. Really? Well, I stay on Guam. I can't say I live there, but I stay there.
Or you didn't come from there.
And I wasn't born there, yeah. 58 years, I guess. I lost count there for a minute. Okay, I may become a resident of the Philippines, but I cannot claim I am from there. Those of us living in Guam who are non-Chamorro need to determine what meaning to give to Mes Chamorro. Now, I got to translate here. You can't take that literally, although I know sometimes it's tempting. The word mes is a Spanish word for month. And it also was adapted into Chamorro, so it is the Chamorro word for month. Even though it wasn't born here and doesn't live here, it's a Chamorro word for month. I gotta go, but I'll come back to tomorrow to the tutelage of Samuel Betances.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A mass shooting. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, has left 10 people dead at a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado. The victims, including a police officer. There is a suspect in custody.
Witnesses say that shortly before 3 p.m. Mountain Time, a man dressed in what looked like tactical gear, according to those who saw what happened, say that he came in and he started shooting at people inside the store and also in the parking lot. Folks just going about their regular grocery run ended up running for their lives.
It's like bang, 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 and I immediately sprinted over to her. And
Boulder police officer Eric Talley's last moments on the force were nothing short of heroic. The 51-year-old officer was the first to arrive on the scene, and he died. He was killed while trying to save the lives of others.
Fox's Alicia Acuna in Boulder. Police have not released any names, nor what the shooter's motive may have been. New charges have been filed against the alleged gunman in the shootings at 3 Atlanta area spas last week. Robert Long now facing 8 charges of malice murder and aggravated assault in the deaths of 8 people. More than 1,000 people have been arrested after several nights of violence in Miami Beach.
Numerous nights of the spring break have seen chaotic fights with groups of people punching and kicking others, men and women, and crowds running through the streets to take cover. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, police, including a SWAT team in their armored vehicle, shot pepperball bullets to disperse the unruly crowd.
Fox's Phil Keating, who reports the city of Miami Beach is extending its state of emergency and an 8 p.m. curfew until after the spring break season. Wall Street closed Monday higher. The Dow gained 103 points, NASDAQ 162. The S&P 500 closed 27 points higher. But Asian stock markets have closed Tuesday lower, and Dow futures are down. America is listening to Fox News.